The encrypted Priority 1 orders reached Commander Elias Vance at precisely 040 hours Terran Standard Time, arriving through a channel so secure that the receiving terminal in his quarters required both retinal and genetic verification before the message even flickered into existence. The words were brief, stripped of any politeness or explanatory cushioning. Attend the Galactic Council Summit. Do not reveal the Aegis unless provoked. No signature was necessary, only one branch of Earth's High Command used that level of bluntness, and they rarely summoned a man like Vance unless the stakes threatened more than just his career. Elias closed the terminal, the soft click of the casing sealing the words away. Outside the viewport, Luna hung silent against the black, her cratered face bathed in pale sunlight. Somewhere beneath that silver dust, in the hidden vaults of Lunar Drydock 6, lay the Aegis. The Council didn't know it existed. Most humans didn't either. Even within the fleet, its name was only whispered in corridors, half rumor, half myth. And yet, he had captained her once briefly, in exercises that had left the testing officers too stunned to even debrief him properly. By 600 hours, he was aboard a secure shuttle headed toward the dock. The shuttle's pilot, a young lieutenant with eyes too sharp for his years, said nothing for the duration of the flight. That was fine. Elias had little to offer in conversation. His mind was already circling the likely reasons for high commands. Sudden summons. Humanity's relationship with the Galactic Council had always been tenuous. 3 years since formal admission, and still, the elder species treated Earth as if it were a newly discovered feral colony, potentially amusing, occasionally dangerous, but certainly beneath their notice. Dockside security was unusually heavy, even for the Aegis. 2 Marines scanned him twice, confirming his identity before granting access to the elevator shaft that plunged deep into the moon's substructure. The descent felt longer than usual, as though gravity itself had grown suspicious of his presence. When the doors opened, the cavernous space of Drydock 6 unfolded before him. And there she was. The Aegis was less a ship than a presence. Her black hull devoured the overhead lights, warping reflections like oil on water. Her silhouette was sleek but carried a coiled menace, like a predator pretending to sleep. Quantum lattice plating shimmered faintly where the armor caught stray motes of light, and the barely visible hum of gravitic projectors made the air vibrate in the bones. Marcus? Hale was already waiting at the boarding ramp, his coveralls smeared with streaks of polymer sealant. He had the kind of face that always looked half amused, even in a war zone. "High Command pull you out of bed, too?" he asked without greeting. "Didn't even let me finish my coffee," Elias replied, stepping onto the ramp. Marcus snorted. "Figures, you saw the orders. Enough to know we're playing diplomat. Diplomat, in this ship." Marcus gave a low chuckle, shaking his head. "That's like sending a wolf to a sheep convention." From deeper inside the hangar, Captain Riker Holt emerged, all sharp lines and deliberate movements. Riker had served in conflicts before humanity ever joined the Council, and the faint scars across his temple spoke of close encounters with both kinetic fire and plasma burns. If Marcus was the sardonic engineer, Riker was the unblinking sentinel. "You're late," Riker said, though his tone carried no accusations, just fact. "I'm here before the launch," Elias replied. "Council won't like this," Riker continued. "Us showing up in a ship they don't know exists. Some of them will see it as a threat. Some will see it as an invitation. That's why they gave me this order," Elias said evenly. "We don't reveal her unless they force our hand. Until then, we're just another delegation." Marcus made a noise halfway between agreement and disbelief. "You really think they won't force it?" Elias didn't answer. The pre-launch cycle engaged with a low rumble. Artificial gravity harmonics thrummed through the deck as the Aegis awakened. Systems blinked from dormant amber to ready green. Navigation charts loaded in layered holograms. A river of symbols and coordinates mapping the slipstream. Corridor 2, Aerithros Prime. They lifted from the dock without ceremony. No fanfare. No broadcast, just a whisper of displacement as the ship vanished into the black. Within minutes, Luna was a pale memory, replaced by the shimmering tunnel of the slipstream drive. The journey should have been uneventful, but the Council's reputation for political theatrics kept everyone silent. Even Marcus, who usually filled the air with technical monologues, spent most of the transit reviewing system diagnostics like a man expecting to be interrupted at any second. Riker, on the other hand, simply stood in the observation bay, arms crossed, watching the slipstream distort into 1,000 ghost images of stars by the time Aerithros Prime came into view. Elias felt the pressure in his chest like an old injury. The planet was beautiful from Orbita, vast ocean world with continents like fragments of emerald scattered across a deep blue sphere. The Galactic Council chamber floated above it in a station the size of a small moon, its surface gleaming with crystalline architecture that caught the system's twin suns. Docking clearance came begrudgingly. A clipped alien voice Valorian. If Elias wasn't mistaken, provided their assigned berth, the tone dripping with administrative disdain. They landed in a quiet section of the station's docking ring, far from the grand entrances used by the Council's more favored members. The walk to the chamber was long. Deliberately so, passing through corridors where alien delegates' aides could catch sight of them and exchange whispers. Elias caught fragments in untranslated languages, but the tone was universal. Curiosity laced with mockery. When the chamber doors opened, the sound was a living wall. Hundreds of voices, hundreds of species, some speaking in sonic frequencies that rattled in the human skull. The amphitheater's tiers climbed upward like a spiral galaxy, each section a mosaic of colors, forms, and motions. The air shimmered faintly with translation fields. The human delegation's seats were, predictably, near the outer rim. From here, the central speaking platform was a distant island, and the elder species' seats were positioned like a gravitational center around it. The first alien voice to address them came not from the floor, but from a high-tier Kreth warlord, his armor adorned with jagged metallic crests. His voice carried perfectly across the chamber. Humans arrive uninvited to serious debate, as if their juvenile ventures in space entitle them to shape galactic policy. A ripple of agreement moved through parts of the chamber. Elias kept his face unreadable, but his gaze locked on the warlord without blinking. He knew better than to reply yet. First, you let them underestimate you. Then, when the timing is right, you show them exactly why that was a mistake. The session was just beginning, and already the tension was thick enough to taste. Whatever High Command feared was unfolding here. It had already begun. And Elias suspected. The day would come to a point where the Aegis could no longer remain a secret. The chamber's central dais rotated slowly, its crystalline surface refracting light into 1,000 shifting hues as the first formal address began. The Valorian Chancellor, a tall, sinuous figure of translucent flesh and flowing silver veins, spoke with a tone that dripped both patience and condescension. The matter before us is simple. The voice translated evenly into the air. Human vessels have entered prohibited sectors without sanction. This council demands an accounting. 1,000 eyes, some biological, some optical lens sterned. Toward the outer ring where the human delegation sat, Elias could feel the weight of their scrutiny pressing against his skin. A collective judgment rendered before any evidence was truly discussed. Marcus shifted in his seat beside him, clearly resisting the urge to roll his eyes. Prohibited sectors, he muttered under his breath. Half of those zones aren't even on our star charts. Riker didn't respond. He sat straight-backed, his expression an impassive mask, but Elias knew him well enough to sense the coiled readiness behind it. Riker had spent too many years in the field to mistake this for anything but a calculated political ambush. The Zethric, deliquent insectoid mass of shifting chitin plates and clicking mandibles rose next. A holographic projection appeared above the dais, showing a grainy image of a human vessel entering a region marked in red. This, the translator voice clicked, is irrefutable proof. Your kind trespasses into a war zone designated off-limits. By unanimous council decree, Elias recognized the ship instantly. It was not an Earth Fleet vessel, but its silhouette had been deliberately modified to resemble one. The image resolution was poor enough that the deception would pass to anyone unfamiliar with Terran design specifics. He also knew the Zethric were not above manufacturing incidents to weaken rivals. The murmurs began almost immediately, waves of disapproval moving through the amphitheater. Elias let them wash over him, controlling his breathing, waiting for the right moment to stand. When the council speaker, ancient, moth-like being whose wings shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, called for the human delegation to respond, Elias rose slowly, deliberately, ensuring every gaze stayed locked on him. "Council members," he began, his voice carrying across the translation field with the steady cadence of someone who knew exactly what he wanted to say. "The vessel you see projected is not part of Earth Fleet. Its registry is falsified. We do not trespass into prohibited sectors, nor do we act without cause in foreign territories. If you wish to accuse humanity, do so with truth, not forgery." The Zethric delegate's mandibles snapped open in what Elias assumed was a gesture of outrage. "Are you calling this council's evidence fraudulent?" "I am calling this evidence incomplete," Elias replied without flinching. "I would remind this chamber that humanity has never launched an unprovoked assault on any member world. We are new here, yes, but we are not reckless." Some species reacted with derisive laughter, a sound that came in many forms: snapping jaws, grinding exoskeletons, harmonic trills that managed to sound both beautiful and mocking. The Kreth warlord leaned forward from his elevated seat, the jagged edges of his armor catching the light. "You mistake your place, human. Your species' admission to this council was a courtesy, not a recognition of equality. Your military is an afterthought. Your fleets are negligible. And yet, you arrive here with defiance in your tone." Marcus murmured, just loud enough for Elias to hear, "If he knew what's parked in orbit right now." Elias kept his eyes on the warlord. "Respect is not granted by courtesy," he said evenly. "It is earned by conduct. If you wish to challenge humanity's right to defend its borders, you will find us ready." The room stirred at that, a shift in atmosphere like the sudden change before a storm. Several delegates exchanged hurried words with their aides. Others looked amused, as though watching a small animal bare its teeth. The Valorian chancellor raised a long, translucent hand. "Then let us speak plainly. The council proposes the following. Humanity will submit its military registry for inspection. Your warships will be cataloged and verified to ensure no violations of treaty boundaries. Failure to comply will be taken as an admission of deceit, and sanctions will be enacted." Marcus's jaw tightened. Riker's eyes narrowed. Elias knew this was the moment High Command had warned him about the push to strip humanity of any strategic secrecy. He took a breath, aware of the silence that followed the Chancellor's statement. "Inspection of our fleets will not occur," he said clearly. "Earth will not surrender its defenses to the scrutiny of powers that may, one day, decide to use that knowledge against us. If this council truly values peace, it will judge us by our actions, not by the number of cannons we carry." The council speaker's wings shifted color, a subtle sign of displeasure. "Then the matter will proceed to vote. One by one, holographic sigils appeared above each delegate station as they cast their decision. From their vantage point, the humans could see a pattern emerging far more in favor of sanctions than against. The political machinery was moving swiftly and not in their favor. Riker leaned toward Elias, his voice low. "They're going to pass it, and once they do, they'll send ships to inspect us, whether we agree or not." "That's the plan," Marcus said darkly. "Push us until we either submit or show our teeth." Elias remained standing, watching the sigils tally in the air. High Command's final instruction echoed in his mind: do not reveal the Aegis, unless provoked. They were about to cross that line when the vote concluded. The speaker announced the result by majority decision. The Council authorizes the deployment of an inspection fleet to Sol for the purpose of verifying human compliance. The words hung in the chamber like a gavel strike. Some delegates looked satisfied. Others simply looked curious. Elias gave a single nod. "Then humanity will prepare to receive your fleet," he said, his tone unreadable. "But know this: if you come to our system under false pretenses, you will find we are not as unprepared as you believe." That drew a few startled looks, even a ripple of unease from some of the more cautious species. The speaker moved on to the next agenda item, but the damage had been done. In the space of one vote, humanity had been pushed into a corner from which there were only two exits: submission or demonstration. As they left the chamber, Marcus walked with his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his expression grim. "They've just given us the perfect excuse," he said. Riker's voice was low, controlled. "Perfect excuse for what?" Marcus glanced at Elias, then back at Riker. "For showing them what happens when you mistake restraint for weakness." Elias didn't answer. But in his mind, the decision had already been made. If the inspection fleet crossed into Sol space with hostile intent, the Aegis would no longer remain a secret. The only question now was whether the Council truly understood what provocation looked like. The inspection fleet entered Sol space to standard days after the vote. Their arrival preceded by a wave of long-range sensor pings that rippled across every listening station from the asteroid belt to the Kuiper line. They came in force for Zethric heavy cruisers, 2 Kreth frigates, and a Valorian command carrier whose crystalline hull refracted sunlight into jagged rainbows. The official communiques spoke of verification and peaceful observation. But the tactical formations told another story. These ships had not come to look. They had come to intimidate. Elias stood in the Aegis's command nexus, the panoramic holographic displays wrapping around him like a sphere of stars. Each hostile vessel was rendered in meticulous detail, every energy spike and vector plotted. Marcus Hale stood hunched over the engineering console, hands moving in tight. Efficient motions as he ran final diagnostics. Power core stable. Quantum shields at 99%. Graviton lances warmed and synced. "She's ready, Commander." Riker Holt, posted at Tactical, was already cycling targeting solutions. His voice carried no inflection, just professional precision. "We can disable any of them in under 30 seconds. All of them inside 4 minutes, assuming no evasive surprises." Elias's gaze swept the formation. The Council had given these captains a diplomatic mask to hide behind, but they were predators circling what they believed to be prey. They expected human compliance, perhaps token resistance, nothing more. The element of surprise remained intact. None of them had ever seen the Aegis. "Bring us out of cloak." Elias said that the hull's adaptive quantum layer shifted from its absorption mode, letting starlight spill across the ship's edges. The Aegis emerged like a shadow, solidifying into steel, her lines too clean, her angles too deliberate to be mistaken for anything the Council had sanctioned. The alien vessels reacted instantly. Sensor pings spiked. Formation patterns adjusted, weapons, power readings began to climb. A channel request came from the Valorian command ship. Elias allowed it. The image resolved into the Chancellor's. Younger military adjutant whose translucent skin flushed faintly with agitation. Unidentified vessel, you are operating within restricted engagement space. Identify yourself and stand down for boarding inspection. This is Commander Elias. Vance of Earth Fleet, Elias replied. The vessel you see is Earth property. You will not board her. The adjutant's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of calculation. This design is unknown to the Council Registry. Under the authority granted by the recent resolution, we are authorized to compel compliance. Then you are moments away from exceeding your mandate, Elias said, and making a mistake you cannot undo. The channel cut abruptly. Marcus glanced up from his console. That's them calling their bluff, or thinking they are. Elias gave a short nod. First targets. The tactical officer didn't hesitate. Lead Zethric cruiser power node cluster aft of main reactors. Non-lethal strike will take out propulsion and primary weapons without hull breach. Secondary target, portside Kreth, frigate, shield harmonics disruptor shot. They'll go blind before they realize what hit them. Execute. The Aegis moved like nothing else in space, her slipstream shunt allowing micro-jumps that brought her inside enemy targeting locks and out again before the first return volley could be plotted. The Graviton Lance fired one sand almost invisible ripple through the void and the Zethric. Cruiser's running lights dimmed to black. A second shot, precisely tuned, struck the Kreth frigate's shield array. The ship spun helplessly, its targeting reticles collapsing into static. In the council chamber, thousands of light years away, the battle unfolded in real time across the great holoscreens. Delegates watched as a single human warship moved with impossible speed, disabling war-class vessels without delivering a killing blow. Whispers swept the tiers, questions about power sources, weapon mechanics, and the fact that every strike was surgical, never wasteful. On the Aegis, Marcus was already prepping the next cycle. Next pair, ready. We could finish them all in. The next pass, negative, Elias said. No fatalities, no debris. We leave them breathing in, thinking. The final maneuver was almost elegant in its restraint. The Aegis reappeared directly between the Valorian command carrier and the remaining hostile ships. Her silhouette framed by Sol's distant light. A single pulse from her ventral array disabled every active weapons lock in a 10,000-kilometer radius. It wasn't destruction, it was dominance, absolute and unanswerable. Riker looked up from his console. Targets are adrift. All systems offline. They're not going anywhere without a tow. Open a channel to the fleet, Elias ordered. The image of the Valorian adjutant returned. His earlier composure visibly fractured. Elias's voice was steady, deliberate. You have now seen what this vessel can do. You will relay to the Council that Earth does not seek conflict, but neither will we be coerced. Your inspection is concluded. You will withdraw from Sol space immediately. The adjutant hesitated, but only for a moment. Understood. The channel went dark. Marcus exhaled, running a hand over the back of his neck. That's going to play well in the chamber. Elias allowed himself a faint smile. It's not for the chamber, it's for the record. Minutes later, the alien fleet broke formation and began slow retreat burns toward the system edge. The Aegis maintained position, watching them fade into the dark. No pursuit was ordered. The message had been delivered. Back in the council chamber, the silence following the broadcast was heavier than any previous session. Delegates who had voted for sanctions now exchanged uneasy glances. Some species leaned forward with genuine interest. Others whispered with the guarded tones of those reevaluating an opponent The Zethric envoy's mandibles clicked sharply. This changes nothing. One warship does not make you our equal. Elias, speaking through the projection feed, didn't raise his voice. It makes us something you cannot dismiss. There was no rebuttal. When the session adjourned, Elias cut the connection and turned to his crew. Riker's expression was unreadable, but his words carried a quiet conviction. You just moved us from the edges of the map to its center. Marcus smirked, leaning back in his chair, and scared the hell out of everyone in the process. I call that a good day's work. Elias looked once more at the dark between the stars. The Aegis had been a secret born of necessity, but secrecy was no longer its greatest weapon. Now, it was the knowledge that she existed at all. That knowledge would ripple through the galaxy, altering calculations in ways no vote could. Undo the next move would belong to the Council. And when it came, humanity would be ready. The Council convened an emergency session less than 12 hours after the Aegis's demonstration. The great chamber hummed with tension, the usual din of overlapping voices subdued into tight clusters of conversation. Delegates who once ignored the human delegation now studied them with thinly veiled calculation, as though measuring the angles of a blade newly drawn. Elias entered with Riker and Marcus at his side, their footsteps echoing faintly on the crystalline floor. Every motion was deliberate, measured confidence without swagger. The broadcast of the engagement had replayed across half the galaxy by now. It had been dissected, analyzed, and exaggerated by every newsfeed from the core worlds to the fringe colonies. The three men knew exactly what kind of weight they carried into the chamber, and how easily it could turn against them. The speaker's bioluminescent wings pulsed in slow waves of blue and gold as she addressed the assembly. Yesterday, an unsanctioned human vessel disabled multiple Council inspection ships without inflicting fatalities. This was unprecedented. Today, we determined the response. A low murmur rippled through the tiers. The Zethric envoy stood first, mandibles clicking with controlled fury. This was an act of defiance, a calculated insult to this body's authority. If left unanswered, it will invite every minor world to arm itself without oversight. The Kreth warlord rose next, his voice like gravel grinding under steel. The human commander struck with precision. That demands acknowledgement, but it also demands clarity. Was this strike the limit of their capability, or merely a glimpse? Elias stood before the speaker could respond, his height and bearing, drawing a clean line of attention from the outer ring to the chamber's center. The Aegis is not a weapon of conquest. She exists because Earth learned long before joining this council that peace is only possible when defense is certain. We came here seeking cooperation, not subjugation. But make no mistake, if you attempt to dictate our sovereignty through force, we will meet you with the same restraint we showed yesterday, or with none at all. The translation fields carried his words perfectly. Every pause deliberate, every syllable weighed. The effect was immediate. Some species leaned forward, drawn by the quiet authority in his tone. Others shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the threat beneath the civility. Marcus stepped forward, uninvited but not stopped. Your fleets came to our system ready for war. We met them without killing a single crewman. That restraint is the difference between humanity and those who hide aggression behind the word inspection. His voice carried a sharper edge. The engineer's pragmatism stripped of diplomatic polish. If your real concern is that the galaxy saw a ship you didn't build, then admit it. Don't pretend this is about peace. A flicker of movement in the tiers caught Elias's eye, a delegate from the minor Tron worlds, raising a slender hand. The humans have shown capability and discretion. We cannot afford to alienate a power that can defend without destroying. I propose a defensive compact. Member worlds may request their protection in exchange for mutual recognition of sovereignty. The suggestion sent a ripple through the chamber. Smaller civilizations leaned toward it instantly, their representatives whispering to aides. For them, a protector who could disarm without annihilation was worth more than the empty promises of distant empires. The Valorian Chancellor spoke next. His voice smooth but weighted with intent. A compact of this nature would shift the balance of power in this council. The humans would hold a role equal to the elder species. He paused, the statement hanging like a blade. Perhaps that is inevitable. The Zethric envoy hissed, mandibles snapping. It is dangerous. It is reality, the Chancellor replied, unblinking. The speaker raised a hand, silencing the chamber. The proposal will be entered into vote. Before we proceed, the human commander may state final terms. Elias inclined his head slightly. Our terms are simple. We will not station the Aegis in any system without invitation. We will not initiate hostilities. And we will stand against any aggressor who violates the sovereignty of a recognized member world. This includes ourselves. If we breach the compact, we accept the same judgment. The words landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples in all directions. Even Riker, who rarely showed surprise, glanced sideways at Elias. The commitment was bold, binding them by the same rules they demanded of others. It stripped the Council of the argument that humans sought unchecked freedom. The vote began. Sigils flared above each station: green for assent, crimson for rejection, amber for abstention. From the human seats, the pattern was visible long before the tally finalized. Green spread quickly among the lesser powers, then more cautiously. Among some of the mid-tier civilizations, the elder species split down the center, unwilling to show weakness but unable to ignore the shifting tide. When the final sigil dimmed, the speaker's wings shimmered a deep gold. By narrow majority, the defensive compact passes. Humanity is now recognized as a sovereign power with mutual defense obligations to any signatory. The reaction was immediate. Some delegates applauded in their own alien fashion. Others left their stations in visible agitation. The Zethric envoy stalked away without a word. Marcus exhaled slowly, as though finally allowing himself to believe it. We just rewrote our place in this galaxy. Riker's eyes followed the departing warlord and painted a target on our backs the size of Jupiter. Elias's voice was calm, but it carried the steel of conviction. Targets don't matter when the enemy learns they can't hit you. Later, aboard the Aegis, the three men stood in the observation bay, watching Erythros Prime recede into the black. The station's crystalline lights faded to faint specks. Swallowed by the void, Marcus leaned on the railing, his gaze fixed on the shifting constellations. You know they're going to test us again. Sooner or later, someone will want to see if we're just as fast the second time. Riker gave a faint nod. Then we'll be ready the second time, and the third, and every time after. Elias let the silence stretch for a moment, the hum of the ship's systems filling the air. They wanted to know if humanity had a place among them. Now they know. And from this point on, they'll remember the cost of forgetting it. The Aegis's slipstream drive engaged, wrapping the stars in liquid light. In moments, the galaxy itself seemed to bend away from them, as though making space for a force it had underestimated for the last time. When the black returned, it brought with it the quiet certainty that the game had changed forever. The Council could debate, maneuver, and plot, but they would do so knowing that somewhere, in the deep reaches of human space, a shadow-black warship waited silent, watchful, and utterly certain of what it could do. And that knowledge, Elias thought, was the real weapon